She handed him her resignation at 6 p.m. on a Thursday, and by 9 p.m., she was standing in his penthouse, breathless and uncertain, while Chicago glittered 40 floors below. For 3 years, Adaobi Sunday had been the perfect secretary to billionaire Graham Whitlock, efficient, invisible, safe. But tonight, the man who controlled empires couldn't control the hunger in his eyes. Tonight, he wasn't asking her to schedule meetings or manage his calendar. He was asking her to stay. Not as an employee. As the woman he'd been starving for since the day she walked into his life. One night. One confession. One choice that would shatter everything they'd carefully built between them. Because when a man like Graham Whitlock finally breaks, he doesn't just fall, he devours. And Adaobi Sunday was about to discover that some men don't just want you. They choose you. Out loud. If you're ready for a love story that burns slow and hits hard, stay with us. And don't forget to like and subscribe, you won't want to miss what happens next. The elevator doors opened directly into Graham Whitlock's penthouse, and Adaobi Sunday stepped into a silence so complete it felt like walking into a held breath. She shouldn't be here. Her resignation letter was still on his desk, the ink barely dry, and yet here she was, standing in the foyer of his private sanctuary at 9:30 on a Thursday night because he'd sent her a single text message. Come to me. Please. That word, please, had undone her completely. Graham Whitlock didn't beg. He commanded, negotiated, conquered. But he never begged. Not in the 3 years she'd worked beside him, anticipating his needs before he voiced them, managing his chaos with quiet efficiency, pretending she didn't notice the way his gaze sometimes lingered on her mouth when she spoke. The penthouse was all glass and steel and shadows, Chicago spreading beneath them like scattered diamonds. She moved further inside, her heels clicking against marble, her heart a wild thing throwing itself against her ribs. She'd worn the navy dress he'd once complimented, the one that hugged her curves in ways that made her feel powerful and vulnerable all at once. Her locks were pulled back, gold hoops catching the low light, and she hated that even now, even terrified, she'd dressed for him. The space around her was exactly what she'd imagined Graham's private world would be, minimalist but warm, expensive but not ostentatious. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that looked actually read rather than decorative. A grand piano sat in the corner, its surface gleaming under recessed lighting. She wondered if he played, realized there was still so much she didn't know about him despite 3 years of proximity. Adaobi. His voice came from the darkness near the floor-to-ceiling windows, rough and low, and she turned to find him silhouetted against the city lights. He'd loosened his tie, rolled his sleeves to his elbows, and even from across the room, she could feel the tension radiating off him like heat. You came, he said, and there was something raw in those 2 words, something that sounded dangerously close to relief. You said please, she replied, keeping her voice steady even as her hands trembled. I didn't think you knew how. Graham moved toward her, each step deliberate, and the closer he got, the harder it became to breathe. He was beautiful in that cold, aristocratic way that photographs never quite captured, sharp jawline, pale eyes that missed nothing, dark hair always perfectly controlled. But tonight there was something uncivilized in his expression, something hungry and barely leashed. She could see the exhaustion in the lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders that spoke of hours spent wrestling with decisions. He looked like a man who'd been fighting himself and had finally surrendered. Why did you resign? He asked, stopping just close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker, more dangerous. Adaobi lifted her chin, meeting his gaze even though everything in her screamed to look away. Because I can't do this anymore. Do what? Pretend. The word cracked between them like breaking glass. Pretend I don't notice the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. Pretend my hands don't shake every time you stand too close. Pretend I'm fine being the invisible woman who keeps your life running while you build empires and I just... She stopped, pressing her lips together, fighting for control. Graham's jaw tightened. You're not invisible. Then what am I? She took a step toward him, done with careful, done with professional, done with 3 years of swallowing her pride. What am I to you, Graham? Your secretary? Your assistant? The person you trust to manage every detail of your life except the one that matters? Don't. His voice dropped to something dangerous, a warning and a plea tangled together. Don't what? Tell the truth? We're good at a lot of things, but apparently, honesty isn't one of them. She laughed, sharp and bitter. Do you know what it's like? Watching you charm investors, watching Maribel Knox drape herself over you at every charity gala while I stand there with my tablet, taking notes like I don't. She bit her tongue, hard enough to taste copper. Like you don't what? Graham closed the distance between them in 2 strides, and suddenly he was right there, so close she could see the flecks of silver in his eyes, could feel the heat coming off his body. Say it, Adaobi. For once, just say what you're thinking. Like I don't wish it was me. The confession tore out of her, and she immediately wanted to take it back, to rewind, to protect herself, but it was too late. Like I don't go home and hate myself for caring. Like I don't lie awake wondering if you ever think about me the way I think about you. The silence that followed was devastating. Graham stared at her, something fierce and almost painful flickering across his face. His hands flexed at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Every night. The ground shifted beneath her feet. What? Every night, he repeated, louder now, more certain. I think about you every night. I think about you when I wake up. I think about you in meetings, in the car, standing in the shower trying to convince myself this is just, that you're just. He dragged a hand through his hair, destroying its perfect order. You think you're invisible? Adaobi, you're all I see. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stand there while her entire world reorganized itself around those words. Then why? Her voice broke. Why didn't you ever? Because I'm a coward. The admission seemed to cost him, his shoulders tensing, his hands curling into fists at his sides. Because wanting you terrifies me more than any boardroom, any deal, any risk I've ever taken. Because the last time I let myself want someone, she used it against me, twisted it into a weapon, and I swore I'd never. He stopped, jaw working. But you're not her. You're nothing like her. And that scares me even more because I don't know how to want you halfway. I don't know how to have you in my life and not. Not what? Graham's eyes burned into hers. Not consume you completely. The honesty in those words should have frightened her. Instead, it lit something reckless inside her chest, something that had been smoldering for 3 years, waiting for oxygen. Maybe, she said quietly, dangerously. I want to be consumed. The sound he made was somewhere between a laugh and a groan, pained and hungry all at once. You don't know what you're saying. I'm a grown woman, Graham. I know exactly what I'm saying. She stepped closer, close enough to touch him if she dared. I'm saying I'm tired of being careful. Tired of professional. Tired of pretending this thing between us doesn't exist just because it's complicated. It's more than complicated. His voice had gone rough, almost desperate. If we do this, if we cross this line, everything changes. Your career, your reputation, the way people look at you. They'll say you slept your way to the top. They'll reduce everything you are, everything you've accomplished, to this. And what about you? She tilted her head, challenging him. What will they say about you? A muscle jumped in his jaw. That I'm a lucky bastard who finally got smart. Despite everything, she almost smiled. You've thought about this. About us. I've thought about nothing else for 3 years. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and traced the line of her jaw with one finger. The touch was feather-light, devastating. I've imagined every version of this conversation. Every way it could go wrong. Every reason why I should keep my distance. And? Her voice was barely a whisper. And none of it matters when you look at me like that. Like what? Like you want me to stop being reasonable. Adaobi caught his hand, pressed it flat against her cheek, holding his gaze. I'm resigning anyway. So there's no power imbalance, No ethical line. Just you and me and whatever this is. It's not that simple. Why not? Because when I touch you. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and her breath caught. When I finally allow myself to have you, I won't be gentle. I won't be controlled. I'll want all of you, Adaobi. Your time, your attention, your... He stopped, something almost vulnerable flickering in his eyes. I need you to understand what you're walking into. She turned her head, pressed a kiss to his palm, felt him shudder. I'm Nigerian, Graham. We don't do anything halfway either. So if you're waiting for me to run, you'll be waiting a long time. The sound he made was pure frustration, pure want, and then he was kissing her, and the world caught fire. His mouth was demanding, claiming, everything 3 years of restraint had built up to, and she met him with equal hunger, fisting her hands in his shirt, pulling him closer, closer, until there was no space left between them. He tasted like whiskey and desperation, and when his hands slid to her waist, gripping hard enough to leave marks, she gasped against his mouth and arched into him. The kiss deepened, turned molten, and Adaobi lost all sense of time and space. There was only Graham, his hands mapping her body like he was memorizing every curve, his mouth hot and insistent against hers. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard, and the look in his eyes was pure possession. Tell me to stop. He breathed against her lips, even as his hands roamed higher, spanning her ribcage, his thumbs brushing the undersides of her breasts. Tell me this is a mistake. It's not a mistake, she managed, dizzy with want. It's the first honest thing we've done in 3 years. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and what she saw in his face stole what was left of her breath. Raw need, yes, but also something deeper, something that looked dangerously like devotion. I won't share you, he said, voice rough. If we do this, if you give yourself to me, I won't be civilized about it. I won't be the man who smiles politely while other men look at you. I'll be... possessive? She raised an eyebrow, trying for lightness even as her heart raced. I noticed. Is that a problem? Only if you think I'm the type of woman who belongs to anyone. She traced the line of his jaw, felt the muscle jump under her fingers. I'm not a prize, Graham. I'm not something you win or own or control. I know that. He caught her hand, brought it to his mouth, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that felt like a promise. But I'm still going to make sure you never want another man again. The arrogance in those words should have annoyed her. Instead, heat pooled low in her belly, liquid and insistent. That's a bold claim. It's not a claim. His eyes locked on hers, dark with intent. It's a guarantee. And then he was kissing her again, slower this time but no less devastating, one hand tangling in her locks, the other splayed possessively against the small of her back. She melted into him, into the kiss, into the feeling of being wanted with such single-minded intensity it felt like being worshipped. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Graham rested his forehead against hers. His hands were trembling where they held her, and that small sign of vulnerability made her chest ache. Stay, he whispered. Not just tonight. Stay with me. Let me figure out how to do this right. What if you can't? The question came out smaller than she intended. What if this burns out? What if? It won't. The certainty in his voice was absolute. I don't know how I know, but I do. You're not something I'll get tired of, Adaobi. You're the thing I've been trying not to want because I knew, once I had you, I'd never let go. She pulled back enough to study his face, searching for cracks in the armor, for signs of doubt. But all she found was naked honesty, and it terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. Maribel won't go quietly, she said, because someone had to be practical. Your board will have opinions. And the media. Let them talk. He cupped her face in both hands, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. I've spent my entire life building something I thought mattered. Empire, influence, power. But none of it means anything if I'm alone. If I don't have... His voice caught. If I don't have you. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and unexpected. You can't just say things like that. Why not? Because it makes it real. Because it makes me hope. And I've spent 3 years convincing myself not to hope. Graham's thumbs brushed away the tears that spilled over. Then let me give you something better than hope. Let me give you certainty. I choose you, Adaobi. Not in secret, not halfway. I choose you out loud, in front of everyone, and I don't care who has a problem with it. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow. Next week. Next year. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the corner of her mouth. I'll say it until you believe me. She wanted to argue, to protect herself, to maintain some kind of control over the situation. But looking at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly against her face, she realized he was just as terrified as she was. Just as desperate. Okay, she whispered. Okay? I'll stay. She smiled, shaky but real. But if Maribel shows up at my apartment with those designer talons, I'm blaming you. Graham laughed, and the sound was so unexpected, so genuine, that it made her chest ache. I'll handle Maribel. I'll handle all of it. You just... He pulled her close again, tucking her against his chest, and she could feel his heart racing against her cheek. Just don't disappear on me. Promise me that. I promise. She wrapped her arms around his waist, held on tight. But you have to promise me something too. Anything. Don't make me regret this. Don't make me into someone I'm not just because it's easier for you. I'm Nigerian. I'm curvy. I'm loud when I'm passionate about something, and I won't apologize for taking up space. Graham pulled back, tipped her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. I don't want you any other way. The woman I fell for doesn't apologize for existing. She walks into rooms like she owns them. She challenges me when I'm being an ass. She makes me want to be better just to deserve her. Fell for? Her breath caught. Graham, I'm in love with you. The words came out rough, unpracticed, like he was speaking a language he'd never learned. I don't know when it happened. Maybe the first day, when you told me my schedule was a disaster and you could fix it. Maybe the night you stayed late to help me prep for the Tokyo deal, and we ended up talking about everything except work. Maybe it was gradual, so slow I didn't notice until I couldn't breathe without you in the room. He stroked her cheek, his touch achingly tender. But I'm in love with you, and I'm done pretending I'm not. Adaobi felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been locked tight for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Joy, pure and terrifying and absolutely overwhelming. I love you too, she said, and watched his face transform. I've loved you for so long I don't remember what it feels like not to. And it's terrifying because I don't know how to do this, how to be with someone who... He kissed her quiet, soft and sweet and full of promise. We'll figure it out, he murmured against her lips. Together. And for the first time in 3 years, Adaobi let herself believe it might actually be possible. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped around each other, the city glittering below them like a promise of everything they could build together. When Graham finally pulled back, there was something almost shy in his expression, something boyish that made him look years younger. I should probably feed you, he said. I have a terrible habit of forgetting people need to eat when I'm focused on work. She laughed, the sound bubbling up unexpected and light. I know. I'm the one who makes sure you have food. See? I need you. He took her hand, laced their fingers together, and the simple intimacy of it made her heart stutter. Come on. I'll make you something. You cook? Occasionally. When the situation calls for it. He led her toward the kitchen, and she tried not to think about how natural this felt, how right. Fair warning, I'm better with breakfast than dinner. Breakfast? She raised an eyebrow. It's almost 10 o'clock at night. Graham glanced back at her, and the heat in his eyes made her knees weak. Then I guess you'll have to stay until morning. The suggestion hung between them, loaded with possibility and promise, and the weight of a decision they'd both been avoiding for years. Adaobi squeezed his hand, stepped closer, let herself imagine waking up beside him as the sun rose over Chicago. I guess I will, she said softly. And from the way his grip tightened, the way his breath caught, she knew he'd heard everything she wasn't saying, that this wasn't just about one night, or one conversation, or one moment of weakness. This was about choosing each other, consciously and completely, despite the risk. In the kitchen, Graham moved with surprising competence, pulling ingredients from the massive refrigerator while Adaobi perched on one of the bar stools and watched. He'd taken off his jacket, rolled his sleeves higher, and there was something devastatingly domestic about watching him crack eggs into a bowl. The kitchen itself was a study in controlled luxury: marble countertops, professional-grade appliances, everything organized with the same precision Graham brought to his business. But there were small touches of humanity too. A coffee maker that looked well used, a collection of mismatched mugs, a cookbook with worn pages that suggested actual use rather than decoration. "Omelets okay?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder. "Perfect." She propped her chin on her hand, taking in the sight of Graham Whitlock, billionaire tech mogul, making her dinner in his kitchen at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. "This is surreal." "What is?" "This. You. Us." She gestured vaguely. 3 hours ago, I handed you my resignation. Now I'm in your kitchen watching you cook." Graham set down the whisk, turned to face her fully. "Do you regret it? Coming here?" "No." The answer came without hesitation. "Do you regret asking me to?" "My only regret," he said slowly, crossing to stand in front of her, "is that I didn't do this 3 years ago. That I wasted so much time being afraid." Adaobi reached out, straightened his collar even though it didn't need straightening, just because she could. "Maybe we weren't ready 3 years ago. Maybe." He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "But we're ready now." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes. We are." He returned to the stove, and she watched the efficient way he moved, the quiet confidence that came from being comfortable in his own space. It occurred to her that she was seeing a side of Graham few people ever witnessed, not the ruthless CEO, not the calculating businessman, but just a man making dinner for someone he cared about. "Tell me about Maribel," she said suddenly, surprising herself. Graham's shoulders tensed, but he didn't stop whisking the eggs. "What do you want to know? What happened between you two?" "I know the official story: incompatible life goals, mutual decision to part ways. But that's the press release version." He was quiet for a long moment, pouring the egg mixture into the heated pan. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "We met at a charity function 6 years ago. She was beautiful, ambitious, from the right family. On paper, we made perfect sense." He paused, flipped the omelet with practiced ease. "But she didn't want me. She wanted what I represented. The lifestyle, the status, the access to power. Every conversation was transactional. Every moment together felt like a negotiation." Adaobi listened, hearing the pain underneath the matter-of-fact tone. "I proposed anyway," Graham continued, "because it seemed like what I was supposed to do. Build the company, marry the appropriate woman, produce heirs, maintain the dynasty." He laughed, bitter and sharp. 3 months into our engagement, I found out she'd been feeding information about my business deals to her father's investment firm, using pillow talk to trade stock. Graham. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. He plated the omelet, turned to face her. The worst part was realizing I wasn't even surprised. That on some level, I'd always known she didn't love me. That I didn't love her either. We were just playing roles we thought we were supposed to play. He carried the plate over, set it in front of her, but didn't move away. Instead, he braced his hands on either side of her, caging her in, his face close to hers. "But you," he said quietly, intensely, "you see me. Not the money or the power or the name. You see the man who can't sleep without checking his email 50 times. The man who plays piano at 2 in the morning because his mind won't shut off. The man who's terrified he's going to turn into his father, cold and calculating and alone." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You see me, Adaobi. All of me. And you don't run. She reached up, cupped his face in her hands. Why would I run from the best man I've ever known? I'm not. You are. She held his gaze, fierce and certain. You're brilliant and driven, and yes, sometimes you're controlling and stubborn and you work too hard. But you're also kind when you think no one's watching. You remember people's birthdays. You funded an entire scholarship program for underprivileged kids and insisted it be anonymous. You're a good man, Graham Whitlock. And I'm not going to let your ex-fiancée's betrayal convince you otherwise. Something in his expression cracked, went soft and vulnerable. He closed his eyes, leaned into her touch like a man starving for gentleness. I don't deserve you, he murmured. That's not your decision to make. She smiled, brushed her thumb across his cheekbone. I'm the one who gets to decide what I deserve, and I deserve a man who looks at me the way you do. Like I'm the answer to a question you've been asking your whole life. Graham opened his eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. You are. Then he was kissing her again, deep and slow and thorough, and the omelette sat forgotten on the counter while they lost themselves in each other. When they finally came up for air, both breathing hard, Graham rested his forehead against hers. Eat, he commanded softly. Before I forget about food entirely and just what? His smile was wicked promising. Just spend the rest of the night showing you exactly how thoroughly I plan to worship you. Heat flooded through her, liquid and insistent, but she forced herself to pick up her fork. Rain check on the worship. I'm starving. Deal. They ate at the kitchen island, knees touching, conversation flowing easier than it had any right to. Without the weight of professionalism between them, without the need to maintain careful distance, they talked about everything. Her childhood in Lagos, the way her mother had taught her to walk into rooms with her head high no matter who tried to make her feel small. His complicated relationship with his father, a man who'd built an empire but forgotten to build a family. Her dreams of eventually starting her own consulting firm, helping other women of color navigate corporate spaces that weren't built for them. His fear that success had cost him the ability to connect with anyone real. You connect with Zeke, Adaobi pointed out, spearing a piece of omelet. Graham huffed a laugh. Zeke doesn't count. He's known me since before I had money. He's immune to my bullshit. I'm not immune to your bullshit either. No? He leaned closer, eyes glinting with amusement. You hide it well. That's because you were my boss. Were my boss. She corrected herself, and the reality of it hit her again. I really did resign. You did. Graham's expression sobered. And I'm going to accept it. Officially. Tomorrow morning. Her stomach dropped. What? I can't ask you to be with me and work for me. It's not fair to you. He caught her hand, held it tight. But I can offer you something else. Partner with me. Not as my secretary. As my equal. Help me build something that matters. Graham. I'm serious. His intensity was back, that laser focus that had built an empire. You're brilliant, Adaobi. You see things I miss. You connect dots I don't even know exist. And I'm tired of watching you waste your talent on managing my calendar when you could be shaping strategy. Hope fluttered in her chest, fragile and dangerous. You really mean that? I don't say things I don't mean. Not to you. Not anymore. He brought her hand to his lips, held her gaze. So what do you say? Want to build an empire with me? The question was loaded with more than business, and they both knew it. This was about partnership in every sense of the word, about choosing to face the world together rather than apart. Adaobi took a breath, thought about all the reasons to say no, all the ways this could go wrong. Then she looked at the man in front of her, vulnerable and hopeful and offering her not just his heart but his trust, and made her choice. Yes, she said. Let's build something extraordinary. The smile that broke across Graham's face was worth every risk, every fear, every moment of uncertainty. He pulled her into his arms, kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning, and Adaobi surrendered to it completely. When they finally came up for air, he rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. Stay tonight, he murmured. Let me hold you. Let me prove this is real. She nodded beyond words and let him lead her through the penthouse to his bedroom. The space was masculine and minimal, all dark colors and clean lines, but there were personal touches that made it feel lived in. A framed photograph on the nightstand, Graham and Zeke, younger and laughing, arms slung around each other's shoulders. A stack of books on the dresser, everything from philosophy to science fiction. The faint scent of his cologne mixed with something warm and cedar. When he pulled back the covers and drew her down beside him, it felt like coming home. They lay facing each other in the darkness, fully clothed, hands clasped between them like teenagers afraid to push too far too fast. The intimacy of it was almost overwhelming, more naked than skin, more vulnerable than desire. Tell me something true, Graham whispered. Something you've never told anyone. Adaobi thought for a moment, then smiled in the darkness. I used to practice conversations with you. In my apartment alone. I'd imagine what I'd say if you ever asked me to stay. If you ever looked at me like I mattered. His grip tightened on her hand. You matter. You've always mattered. I know that now. She shifted closer, until their faces were inches apart. Your turn. Tell me something true. Graham was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. I'm terrified I'll ruin this. That I'll be too much or not enough. That you'll wake up one day and realize you deserve better than a man who doesn't know how to express feelings without a strategic plan. He paused, and when he continued, the words came out broken. My father told me once that love was a weakness. That the moment you care about someone more than yourself, you've given them the power to destroy you. And I believed him. I've spent my entire adult life building walls to make sure no one ever got close enough to matter. The vulnerability in those words made her chest ache. She freed one hand, cupped his face in the darkness. You won't ruin this, she said firmly. And I don't want perfect, Graham. I want real. I want you, messy and complicated and terrible at expressing feelings. Because underneath all that control, you're the most genuine person I know. He made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob, and then he was kissing her again, deep and slow and thorough, like he had all the time in the world to learn the shape of her mouth, the taste of her, the sounds she made when he touched her just right. His hands found the zipper of her dress, and he pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Can I? The question, the asking, the way he waited for her answer despite the hunger burning in his eyes, it undid her completely. Yes, she breathed. He lowered the zipper with aching slowness, peeling the fabric away from her shoulders, her arms, letting it pull at her waist. His gaze roamed over her, reverent and hungry all at once, and when his fingers traced the curve of her collarbone, she shivered. You're beautiful, he murmured. So incredibly beautiful. Adaobi reached for his shirt, began unbuttoning it with trembling fingers. So are you. They undressed each other slowly, trading kisses and whispered confessions, learning each other's bodies with hands and mouths and breathless wonder. When they finally came together, skin against skin, it felt less like falling and more like flying. Graham worshipped her with his hands, his mouth, his whole body, and Adaobi gave herself over to the pleasure of being wanted so completely. Every touch was a promise, every kiss a vow, and when he finally entered her, they both gasped at the rightness of it, the way they fit together like pieces of a puzzle finally solved. They moved together in the darkness, finding a rhythm that was theirs alone, building towards something that felt bigger than both of them. And when they tumbled over the edge together, Adaobi cried out his name, and Graham buried his face in her neck, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat-slicked and breathless, and Graham pressed kisses to her forehead, her temple, her shoulder. I love you, he whispered. I love you, I love you, I love you. Adaobi felt tears slip down her cheeks, hot and unstoppable. I love you too. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, hearts beating in sync, and for the first time in years, neither of them dreamed of empty rooms or missed chances. Adaobi woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the unfamiliar weight of an arm around her waist. For a disoriented moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she felt Graham's breath warm against her neck, felt the solid presence of him behind her, and everything from the night before came rushing back. She'd stayed. They'd made love. They'd confessed feelings that had been building for years. And now, in the clear light of morning, she had to figure out what came next. Graham stirred behind her, his arm tightening around her waist. "Don't think so loud," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "I can hear you panicking from here." Despite herself, she smiled. "I'm not panicking." "Liar." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder, and the casual intimacy of it made her breath catch. "Talk to me. What's going on in that brilliant mind?" Adaobi turned in his arms, found him watching her with those pale eyes that saw too much. His hair was mussed, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and he looked more human than she'd ever seen him. "I'm trying to figure out how we do this," she admitted. "How we go from boss and secretary to whatever this is, without destroying everything we've both worked for." Graham propped himself up on one elbow, traced patterns on her arm with his free hand. "We do it honestly. We do it out loud. We tell people the truth, that we're together, that it started after your resignation, that anyone who has a problem with it can take it up with me. You make it sound simple. It is simple. People will try to make it complicated because that's what people do. But the truth is simple." He leaned down, kissed her forehead. "I love you. You love me. Everything else is just noise." She wanted to believe him, wanted to have his certainty. But she'd lived in the real world long enough to know that love didn't conquer all, that sometimes good intentions weren't enough. "Maribel won't see it that way," she said quietly. "She'll say I seduced you. That I used my position to. Maribel can say whatever she wants." Graham's voice went hard. "I ended things with her 2 years ago. The only reason she's still in my orbit is because she sits on the board of the charity foundation. But that ends today. Graham. I should have done it years ago. I should have cut ties completely instead of trying to be civilized about it." He cupped her face, made her look at him. "I choose you, Adaobi. That means I don't make room in my life for people who disrespect you. Not Maribel, not anyone." The fierceness in his voice made something warm unfurl in her chest. "You can't just burn bridges because of me. Watch me." "That's not..." She stopped, tried again. "I don't want to be the reason you destroy relationships. I don't want people to say you changed because of me." Graham's expression softened. "Then let them say I changed for the better. Because that's the truth, Adaobi. You make me better. You make me want to be the kind of man who deserves you." She felt tears prick her eyes, hot and unexpected. "You already are. Then trust me." He brushed his thumb across her cheek, catching a tear that had escaped. "Trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust that I'm not going to let anyone make you feel small or less than or like you don't belong in my life." Adaobi took a shaky breath, nodded. "Okay. I trust you." "Good." He kissed her, soft and sweet. "Now come on. I promise you breakfast, and I keep my promises." They showered together, and it was an exercise in exquisite torture, Graham's hands soaping her body, his mouth finding the curve of her neck, the swell of her breasts, the sensitive spot just below her ear. By the time they emerged, both clean and thoroughly distracted, Adaobi was convinced she'd never look at a shower the same way again. Graham lent her one of his dress shirts, and she rolled up the sleeves, loving the way it hung on her, smelling like cedar and him. He pulled on pajama pants and nothing else, and the sight of his bare chest, the defined muscles of his abdomen, made her mouth go dry. They ate pancakes on the balcony, Chicago stretching out beneath them in the morning light, and talked about logistics. Graham would accept her resignation formally but immediately offer her a position as strategic partner, complete with equity and equal say in company decisions. They'd make a joint announcement, frame it as a professional evolution, and let the chips fall where they may. "What about us?" Adaobi asked, pouring more syrup on her pancakes. "Do we announce that too?" Graham considered, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. "We don't hide it. If people ask, we tell the truth. But we don't lead with it either. We let our work speak for itself. It was practical, measured, classic Graham. But there was something in his expression that made her pause. What? He asked, catching her look. She set down her fork. I need to know this is real for you. That it's not just, I don't know, a reaction to me leaving. That 3 months from now, 6 months from now, you won't wake up and realize this was a mistake. Graham set down his own fork, leaned across the table until his face was inches from hers. Adaobi Sunday, I have spent 3 years watching you walk out of my office every night and hating that you weren't coming home with me. I have spent countless board meetings distracted because I was too busy noticing the way you bite your lip when you're thinking. I have turned down a dozen women because they weren't you. His voice dropped, went rough. This isn't a reaction. This isn't impulsive. This is the most certain I've been about anything in my entire life. The conviction in his words stole her breath. Okay. Okay? I believe you. She reached across the table, took his hand. And I promise I'll try not to panic every time something feels too good to be true. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. I'll remind you as many times as you need to hear it. They spent the rest of the morning wrapped around each other on the couch, making plans and stealing kisses and learning how to exist in the same space without the careful distance they'd maintained for years. It was easy and terrifying and absolutely right. Graham showed her the piano in the corner, played a piece by Chopin that made her throat tight with emotion. She told him about her mother's expectations, the pressure to be perfect, to represent her family and her culture with dignity in a world that often didn't make space for women who looked like her. He shared his own struggles with his father's legacy, the weight of expectations he never asked for but carried anyway. Do you ever wish you could just walk away? She asked, tucked against his side on the couch. Start over somewhere no one knows your name? Sometimes, he admitted. But then I think about what I could do with this platform. The lives I could change. The systems I could disrupt. He looked down at her, stroked her hair. Money is just a tool, Adaobi. Power is just leverage. What matters is what you do with it. And what do you want to do with it? Graham was quiet for a long moment, his fingers still tangled in her locks. I want to build something that lasts beyond me. Something that matters. And I want to do it with you. The simple honesty in those words made her chest ache. Then let's do it. Around noon, Graham's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, grimaced. Zeke, he said. I should take this. Adaobi nodded, watched him stand and pace to the windows, phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, I know I missed the golf game, Graham said, then paused. Something came up. Another pause, longer this time. No, I'm not sick. He glanced back at Adaobi, and something in his expression softened. I'm exactly where I need to be. She couldn't hear Zeke's response, but she saw Graham's shoulders relax, saw the small smile that tugged at his mouth. I'll tell you later, Graham said. But yeah, everything's different now. In a good way. He listened for another moment, then laughed. You're an ass. I'll call you tomorrow. He hung up, turned back to Adaobi with a rueful expression. Zeke knows something's up, he said. He can read me too well. He's your best friend. He's supposed to notice. She patted the couch beside her. Come here. Graham returned, pulled her into his lap, and she settled against his chest with a contentment that felt dangerously close to permanent. We should probably get dressed at some point, she murmured. Face the real world. Not yet. His arms tightened around her. Let me have this. Just a little longer. So they stayed there, wrapped around each other, stealing time before the inevitable chaos of public scrutiny and professional complications and all the mess that came with loving someone in the spotlight. But the real world couldn't be held back forever. Around 2 in the afternoon, Graham's phone buzzed with an email notification. He glanced at it, and his expression immediately hardened. What is it? Adaobi asked, sitting up. Maribel. He showed her the screen. She's calling an emergency board meeting for Monday. Says there are concerns about leadership decisions that need to be addressed. Adaobi's stomach dropped. She knows. She suspects. Graham's jaw tightened. She has spies in the office. Someone probably saw your resignation letter. Graham, if she makes this public before we're ready. She won't. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Because I'm going to beat her to it. What do you mean? Graham stood, began pacing, and she recognized the shift in him, from lover to strategist, the razor-sharp mind that had built an empire clicking into gear. We go public tonight, he said. We control the narrative from the start. I'll send a statement to the board, to the press, announcing your new position and our relationship. We frame it as a natural evolution, the woman who's been instrumental to the company's success stepping into a role that reflects her actual contributions. That's risky. Adaobi's mind raced through the implications. The media will have a field day. Let them. He stopped pacing, looked at her with fierce determination. I'm done hiding the most important thing in my life. I'm done letting people like Maribel control the conversation. This is our story, Adaobi. We tell it our way. She stood close to him, took his hands. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no taking it back. I've never been more sure of anything. He pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. I love you. I'm not going to hide that. I'm not going to let anyone make you feel like you're something to be ashamed of. The protectiveness in his voice, the absolute conviction, made her fall in love with him all over again. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Let's tell our story. They spent the next 2 hours crafting a statement, working side by side the way they had for 3 years, but now without barriers. Graham wrote with brutal honesty, acknowledging the transition, explaining Adaobi's new role, confirming their relationship. Adaobi edited with precision, making sure the language honored both of them without apologizing for their choices. When they finally had something they were both satisfied with, Graham looked at her one more time. Last chance to back out, he said quietly. Once I send this, the world knows. Your life changes. Adaobi took a deep breath, thought about everything she was risking, her privacy, her reputation, the comfortable anonymity of being behind the scenes. Then she looked at the man in front of her, the man who'd chosen her out loud, who was willing to stand beside her in the light, and made her choice. Send it, she said. Graham's finger hovered over the send button for just a moment. Then he pressed it, and their future became public knowledge. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, Graham's phone was exploding with notifications, board members demanding explanations, reporters requesting interviews, investors asking questions. But there were also messages of support from unexpected quarters. Zeke sent a text that simply said, "About damn time." Several junior employees sent congratulations. Even some board members expressed approval. And then Maribel called. Graham looked at the screen, then at Adaobi. I should take this. Put it on speaker, she said. We're in this together, remember? He smiled, fierce and proud, and accepted the call. Maribel. What the hell do you think you're doing? Maribel's voice was sharp, furious. Your secretary? Really, Graham? This is a new low even for you. Careful. Graham's voice went cold. You're talking about the woman I love. There was a pause, shocked and brittle. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Adaobi is brilliant, talented, and worth 100 of you. She's my partner, in business and in life. And if you have a problem with that, there's the door. The board will never accept this. They'll see it for what it is, a distraction, a liability. Then they can vote me out. Graham's voice was steel. But I'm not changing my mind. I'm not hiding the woman I love to make you or anyone else comfortable. So you have a choice, Maribel. Accept reality and continue your work with the foundation, or resign and find somewhere else to spread your poison. Another pause, longer this time. When Maribel spoke again, her voice was venomous. You're making a mistake. She'll destroy you. No, Graham said quietly, looking at Adaobi with such tenderness it made her eyes sting. She's saving me. Goodbye, Maribel. He hung up before she could respond, then pulled Adaobi into his arms. That's done, he said. Are you okay? She searched his face for regret, for doubt. I'm perfect. He kissed her temple. I'm finally perfect. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of phone calls and emails and strategic planning. Graham handled the business implications with ruthless efficiency, while Adaobi drafted talking points and coordinated responses. They worked as a team, seamless and synchronized, and watching him trust her judgment, defer to her expertise, made her realize this partnership was going to be extraordinary. As evening fell over Chicago, they finally allowed themselves to breathe. Graham ordered dinner from Adaobi's favorite Nigerian restaurant. How he knew it was her favorite, she had no idea, but it didn't surprise her. He'd been paying attention all along. They ate jollof rice and suya on the balcony as the city lights began to sparkle below them, and for the first time since the announcement went public, they weren't talking about business or strategy or damage control. They were just two people sharing a meal, stealing kisses, building a life. What happens now? Adaobi asked, curled against his side as the night deepened around them. Now? Graham pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Now we build something extraordinary. We change the world. We prove that love doesn't make you weak, it makes you unstoppable. That simple? That simple. He tilted her chin up, met her eyes. I choose you, Adaobi Sunday. Every day, every moment, in front of everyone. And I'm never going to stop choosing you. She kissed him then, soft and slow and full of promise, and tasted their future in the curve of his smile. The night stretched out before them, full of possibility and hope and the kind of love that didn't apologize for existing. And as Chicago glittered beneath them like scattered stars, Adaobi Sunday finally understood what it meant to be chosen, not hidden, not secret, not halfway, but completely, publicly, forever. Graham Whitlock had finally learned that control wasn't the same as power, that vulnerability wasn't weakness, and that the most important empire he'd ever built wasn't made of steel and glass and money. It was made of trust, and honesty, and the courage to love someone out loud. And Adaobi Sunday had learned that taking up space wasn't selfish, that demanding to be seen wasn't arrogant, and that the right man wouldn't ask her to shrink, he'd celebrate every inch of who she was. Together, they were unstoppable. Later that night, as they lay tangled together in Graham's bed, exhausted and content and thoroughly satisfied, Adaobi's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Her mother, who'd been telling her for 3 years to stop settling for being invisible. Her mother, who'd taught her that Nigerian women didn't apologize for their brilliance. The text was simple. I saw the news. I'm proud of you, my daughter. You chose yourself. That's all I ever wanted. Adaobi showed Graham the message, and he smiled against her hair. Smart woman, your mother. She'd like you, Adaobi said. She has a weakness for men who aren't afraid of powerful women. Then I'll have to make a good impression. Graham pulled her closer. When do I get to meet her? The casual way he said it, like meeting her family was inevitable, like their future was already written, made her heart squeeze. Soon, she promised. But fair warning, she's going to interrogate you about your intentions. Good. He kissed her forehead. My intentions are to love you for the rest of my life. She should know that up front. Adaobi felt tears prick her eyes for the 100th time that day. You can't just say things like that. Why not? It's true. He wiped away the tears that spilled over. I'm going to marry you someday, Adaobi Sunday. I'm going to stand in front of everyone we know and vow to choose you every day for the rest of my life. And I'm never going to stop telling you how extraordinary you are. Graham, you don't have to say anything. I'm not asking yet. He smiled, soft and tender. I'm just telling you where this is going. So you know. So you can prepare yourself. She laughed through her tears, overwhelmed and grateful, and so completely in love she could barely breathe. I don't need to prepare myself. I already know my answer. Yeah? His eyes lit up. What is it? Yes. She kissed him, poured everything she felt into it. Yes, yes, yes. To all of it. To this life. To you. To us. Graham held her like she was precious, like she was everything, and Adaobi finally understood that this was what love looked like when it was real, not perfect, not easy, but honest and brave and willing to face the world together. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, hearts beating in sync, and dreamed of empires built on love instead of control, of partnerships that honored both people instead of diminishing one. And when the sun rose over Chicago the next morning, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they woke up together and started building their extraordinary life. One honest conversation at a time. One brave choice at a time. One perfect, imperfect day at a time. Because Graham Whitlock had finally learned that the night he chose Adaobi Sunday out loud, in front of everyone, wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything. If you loved watching Adaobi and Graham finally choose each other, make sure to hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel for more romance stories that will make your heart race and your soul sing. Drop a comment below and tell us your favorite moment from their story. Was it when Graham finally confessed his feelings? Or when Adaobi stood her ground and demanded to be seen? We read every single comment, and your support means the world to us. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next upload, because trust us, you're going to want to see what happens when they face the board together, when they meet each other's families, and when Graham finally makes that proposal official. More passion, more drama, more love stories that prove choosing someone out loud is the most powerful thing you can do. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.